Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
Welcome to Dig on America, where we speak truth to power. Every week, we give you the dig on how American history, policies, and media created the social and political issues we face today. DOA is independent media supported by listeners, but they'll tell you we're just fake news, deep state propaganda, funded by George Soros, the Clinton Foundation, BLM Marxists, and...
I'm either going to have to say L. Ron Hubbard or Starscream.
I'm going to say get a COVID vaccine if you're not vaccinated. For God's sake.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Dig on America. Mikey Famine here with the anchor of the ship, holding us down, Tim Bristol. Thank you, Tim, for stepping in for my lazy, good-for-nothing co-hosts who had they're probably sitting at home with their feet up, eating bonbons, playing Fortnite while Snapchatting with their kids. No, they both have very good reasons to not be here, and I still think you guys suck. So I'll see you guys next week. But Tim,
I mean, I have COVID and I'm still here. So
even with the Rona, Tim showed up. Tim, tell people about your channel and how is your Rona going?
The viewers of the show will remember last week when I said that I have a cold and it's not COVID. Turns out, so when I first got sick, I got the two tests. I got the rapid test and then the other one that takes a couple of days.
Yeah.
The rapid test came back negative, which is why I thought, hey, I don't have COVID. It's just a cold. Well, the other test came back on Thursday. Turns out it was COVID. So I've been in quarantine since then. Today's my last day of quarantine because I no longer have a fever and I'm no longer contagious to the people around me. So it hasn't been great. For the love of God, get a COVID vaccine if you don't have one already, and get the booster shot. And COVID, even the mild symptoms are rough. Like I don't have the lung capacity to speak for at length, and I'm not good at going up and down stairs currently. So, as for my stuffs. Speaking from the center was supposed to happen, but once again, I got COVID, so that's going to be pushed back until I can actually do that. But yeah, it's been fun. But during COVID, I completed my master's thesis, so.
Yay! There is a silver lining.
Yeah. Next week.
Enough time to finish.
Yeah, next week I have my thesis defense, and then I officially graduate.
We'll have some sort of I don't know, I'll send you some Clorox wipes as a congrats grad and a couple of masks, some hydrochloroquine, all the good stuff that you'll need.
So it was funny when we were setting up the day to do the thesis defense. We were going to be like, oh, we can do it in person at the school and all that. And then the next day I found out I had COVID. So I was like, we might want to do that one online.
Perhaps. And we have a very special guest with us today, Joseph Ellis. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm good. I'm coming to you from, believe it or not, Vermont, where it's snowing as I speak.
How many inches you all got so far?
4 or 5, but it's still coming down.
I can't do the northeast. I can't do it. Y'all get way too much snow. I can't drive a moose to work. So I'm gonna need.
I'm from Virginia and my wife is from Mississippi.
Oh,
but we've come to love Vermont. We came up here in our second home up here on top of a mountain during the beginning of the COVID experience and decided that it's really great. If you had to be one place in the United States during the COVID experience, Vermont's the right place.
Pretty sparsely populated.
Small enough state that people feel a sense of collective responsibility to each other, and so people get the shot, and people wear masks, and they've already reached herd immunity in this state. So despite the snow, or if you're a skier, because of the snow, it's a great place to be.
And I don't want us to get like too deep into everything because we got a couple of games we want to play first, so the audience can get to know you. But it's funny you mention that because it is breathtaking the amount of people that I see every day in Chicagoland, no mask, no nothing. You say something to them, they're whipping their phone out and flexing the muscles. They're ready for a fight. They're ready to tell you about how they have a constitutional right for O2, not CO2. And there's just so many Facebook crazies and real life crazies around here. Vermont sounds like an alien planet that I'd love to visit someday.
It is in that regard. Yeah, it is.
Even in Connecticut, it's crazy. People are. We had a disagreement with our mayor who, right before our infection rate went through the roof, took away the indoor mask mandate, and then she had to reinstitute it.
Yeah,
but people are crazy.
Yeah. Well, one of the questions at a show I was on earlier this month, they were asking questions about Thomas Jefferson. Would Jefferson have worn a mask? Would Jefferson have gotten inoculated? And the answer historically is yes, even though he was a libertarian and saw that sovereignty resided in the individual. But he believed that individuals would assume a responsibility to the collective, to their neighbors. And the other founders, some of them, Washington, Hamilton, Adams, thought he was a naive, overly optimistic, idealistic guy. But he would have gotten a vaccine. In fact, he vaccinated all the slaves at Monticello. And it was ironic because when slaves escaped during the war, 17 slaves escaped from Monticello during the war to the British Army. And most of the slaves that escaped to the British Army from other plantations died of smallpox. Over 60%. None of the Monticello slaves died because they'd already been vaccinated. Interesting.
And it's funny. Oh, never mind. I'll do it after this. So here we go. Apparently, Mr. Can't Be Here has a little something that he wanted to say. Go ahead, Dutch.
Hey, what's up, guys? Jason Dutch here with Dig on America. I am just dropping in real quick to do this week's dig. So I'll get to it real quick, but I will also just let you guys know I will be back on the show next week, much to Mikey's dismay.
Boo!
And to those of you who have reached out, I'm going through a family medical issue. I will give you guys all an update on that next week and let you know what's going on, but kind of out of the woods here for the most part, and did have a few minutes to jump in and do this. So thank you to everyone who reached out. Love you guys. Appreciate you guys. But with that being said, hello, Mikey. Hello, Tim.
Oh, gross.
Hello, Joseph Ellis, our esteemed guest, and I believe Pulitzer Prize-winning author, and author of Clauses, which is a book about.
Oh, you're just going to leave that out, huh, Joseph? Going to leave out the Pulitzer. Okay.
The prelude to the Revolutionary War. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the dig here on basically what you would call the textbook historical narrative of the Revolutionary War from like AP. Got a couple little additions in there, but I'll go through this and then hopefully it will lead to some conversation as far as like what's different, anything extended, some more character-driven stories on some of the bit players, some of the groups that were left out of the so-called freedom that was won during this war. So with that being said, as I usually do, I will get into today's dig. And let's rock and roll, folks. All right. So, as I've said many times before, in my 8th grade social studies class, my teacher, Mr. Humble, taught me things that it turns out after doing my own research wasn't exactly the whole story. And this week, we will dive into the topic of the prelude to the American Revolution, what caused it. The American Revolutionary War.
And just for the record, Joseph, if you have any, Joey?
Yes.
Which one do you prefer?
Joe.
Cool. So in case at any point where you want me to stop and pause him in his probably 75% accurate diatribe, just yell pause or yell something like that, and I'll pause, and you can do any clarifications that you need.
Or you could just say wrong, and we'll pause it.
Incorrect.
War, basically 1775 to 1783, was initiated by delegates from the 13 original colonies against Great
Objection
Britain.
to that song.
The war was fought over the issue of U.S. independence from the British Empire. Engagements of the war took place in North America, the Caribbean, and this was new to me, in the English Channel, so got pretty far from the coast. The 7 Years' War now ended before this in 1963. It ended with what was called the Peace of Paris. Not to be.
Wait, did he say 1973?
Yeah, he meant 1760. Yeah.
Oh,
did he not have time to edit?
Yeah, nope. We had to do this one take, baby.
Confused with those dirty Paris Climate Accords. This was the Peace of Paris. And the Peace of Paris basically expelled France from North America. This is the French. They get kicked out of the America. They get to go make the French fries.
What is Borat doing?
But anyway,
here?
at the same time, the British rescinded provisions of colonial charter, claiming to extend from Atlantic to Pacific, and with the Mississippi River basically becoming a dividing line between what Britain claimed to own and what the Spanish claimed to own in the Americas. Although directly administered by the Crown, of course, worn by King Joffrey, and acting through local governors, the colonies were largely governed by native-born property owners. While external affairs were managed by London, colonial militia were funded locally. But with the ending of the French threat in 1763, the legislators expected less taxation, not more taxation. At the same time, the huge costs of the 7 Years' War meant that Parliament expected the colonies to fund their own defense. We would pay for this later. The outcome was a series of disputes as to how these expenses should be paid. It's always about the money, man. So anyway, can I say all about the Benjamins? That's still a thing. Anyway,
No.
a series of taxes, usually known as acts, not to be confused with the equally ambiguous Book of Acts, or whatever Tom Cruise thinks he's doing on screen, were then enacted on the colonies, including the sudden enforcement of the previously unenforced Molasses Act. Now, molasses was important to the production, which was, of course, important to Captain Morgan, and therefore important to me, because what on earth am I going to put in my Diet Coke if it's not for rum? I'm not going to drink it alone. Anyway, in addition to the Molasses Act, the Sugar Act and Stamp Act imposed additional taxes on the colonies to pay for defending the.
Oh, he froze.
Yay.
I was like, yay, it's broken. So just real quick before we go further, Joe, how are those acts?
He's rolling effectively through a big field, but striking certain stones and getting it wrong in other places. But briefly, the Treaty of Paris in 1733 gave Great Britain a third of the North American continent. And the beginning of the trouble with America is right after that, because in effect, Britain does not know how to govern such a large body.
Right.
And they realized they had to clamp down and maintain a greater degree of control. Up until then, the policy was what was called salutary neglect. That was Edmund Burke's phrase. But the attempt to impose new level of control was interpreted by the colonists as, and this is the first conspiracy theory in what becomes real American history, a plot to enslave them. It was really a plan to impose new levels of control that make them into colonists rather than, in other words, second-class British citizens. And the response to this in the respective colonies is to refuse to obey the laws, not to pay the taxes. And this reaches ahead in 1774 when the Tea Act is in place, and the colonists in Boston throw the tea on board the 3 ships in Boston Harbor into the water. And Britain's response to that is to begin a militarization of what up till now had been a political conflict, and to send a larger force to Boston to establish military rule and to, in effect, make Massachusetts an object lesson for the rest of the colonies. That was a big mistake. That is, in your truly's judgment, perhaps the biggest mistake in the history of British statecraft, because that is where the cause comes into existence. They called it the common cause. And what made it common was all the other 12 colonies decided to support Boston and Massachusetts and to agree with them that the imposition of military rule there was unacceptable. It soon became clear to the commander in Boston, whose name was General Gage, who's married to an American who many people think was a closet patriot. If you were a member of the British Army and you traveled outside of Boston for 10 miles, you were in enemy territory. They sent one group to Salem to try to take ammunition out of a garrison there. And when they reached the bridge to the garrison, they were confronted with 5,000 militia.
So,
in other words, 500 British troops are confronted with 5,000 militia. The militia commander said, "You may cross the bridge, but if you touch the ammunition, every one of you is a dead man."
So was this more seen like almost like the U.S. in Iraq or Afghanistan as an occupation?
Yeah. You got it. Or Vietnam.
Yeah. They were an occupying
that
force.
They're facing a situation that is unwinnable.
Yeah.
The traditional view it's a miracle. Washington called it a standing miracle that the Americans won the war. After all, ask yourself this question: how many wars did Great Britain lose between 1750 and 1950?
Yeah, Tim, how many?
1. That was it. And this is the greatest army and navy in the world at the time. It's got an economic system designed to make money available for the military. It hadn't lost a war. It was brimming over with confidence. It was sure of its supremacy, and it stepped into a quagmire. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah. I mean,
No,
I think for the first time, and I try to do this in the book, say it this way, for the first time, Americans can understand the dilemma that the British faced in the war.
Right.
And the British were fighting, and they were attempting to win a war by winning battles, and they won most battles. Washington is the greatest general in American history, and he lost more battles than he won. But he came to the understanding early in the war that there's something very important strategically. He didn't have to win. He had only not to lose. It's a lot easier not to lose. And from that point forward, it was a foregone conclusion. That said, we can, and I don't want to go off on this now.
Okay.
The Americans, the British couldn't win the war, but over time, the Americans could lose it. Patriotism reached a height in summer of 76. From then forward, it was downward. It didn't go away. It simply receded to the local level. People were willing to fight to defend their town. They weren't willing to join the Continental Army.
Right.
If they had wanted to, if they had had a draft, they could have fielded an army of 80,000.
And what did the British have?
And 80,000 in the Continental Army. If they'd done that, they would have won the war in a year.
What did
But
the
they
British
could never field an army. The average size of the Continental Army at full strength was 12 to 15,000. At the end of the recruitment season, at any time, and they were 1 year assignment, 1 year terms, they were down to 3,000.
How many did the British end up having?
The British over time had a total force of about 40,000, but they were divided into different groups, different armies.
Yeah, there was one in the south, and then there was one chasing around Washington.
In the beginning of the war, they sent 32,000 troops and 10,000 sailors to invade New York.
Yeah,
that's a disaster for the Americans. They should have never tried to defend New York. If you notice, it's an archipelago, and whoever controls the sea controls the battle. They almost lost the war. I got a chapter called "The Great Escape" in the book, and everybody thinks of the great moment of the great painting of Lutzow, crossing the Delaware is this great moment. The really great moment was a year before then, when they get across the East River, escaping Long Island, where they're trapped across the East River. And if they hadn't gotten out, the entire American army would have been annihilated. And the war could have ended then, though most people at the time, to include people like Adams and Franklin and Jefferson, said, okay, if you capture our whole army or kill them all, we'll just raise a new army. Most historians would say that's possible and likely. The problem is Washington. If you lost Washington, he was irreplaceable.
Yeah.
And we're not sure what would have happened if that had occurred. And that would have had a huge impact on morale. But the book attempts to give you the military side of the story, but I'm not interested in tracing every cannonball fired in every battle. I am trying to give you one of the things about the war, that the art of the war is how we see it. And the art by Copley and Stewart and other painters of that sort give it a kind of romantic etiquette almost. If there had been a photographer, if we had, or if like in the Civil War, you've got Matthew Brady's photographs. The Vietnam War is the first televised war. If we had seen the war, we wouldn't think about it the same way. It was brutal. It was mostly hand-to-hand. Most battles with 30% casualties. If you were hit in the torso, you had a 60% chance of dying. If you were captured by the British, you had a 40% chance of surviving. The British were more brutal towards prisoners of war than the Japanese were in World War II. There were more Americans killed per capita in the American Revolution than in any war in American history, save the Civil War. So it was not what we think, this kind of etiquette of war. There's a reason, too, why the militia always ran away. It weren't that they were cowards. You had to be disciplined and experienced to stand at attention when the man next to you was disemboweled.
Yeah.
You had to be able to load and reload 4 times a minute instead of once. Because think of it, the whole name of the game is to get them before they got to you. And the British, once they saw where the militia were in the line, would attack that point. The militia would retreat, and then they'd be able to outflank them. It was always a disaster. Washington lost most of his battles because he was commanding troops that could not compete because of the militia with seasoned British veterans. Nevertheless, the heroes in the book, if there are any that are, for me, are the ordinary soldiers who served for the duration in the war. And they never got a pension. And many of them went back to Connecticut, for example. They were told that they were scoundrels because they were going to cost them money. They're afraid they were going to have to pay pensions for them. They were treated more miserably even than the veterans that came back from Vietnam. And I believe that's wrong.
Yeah. All right, let's dig in a little bit more and see what Dutchman has to say.
A riot started in Boston when the authorities seized the sloop called the Liberty on suspicion of smuggling. This sloop...
Is that a ship? What's a sloop?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a kind of masted ship.
Oh, okay.
Now, a sloop is a small boat.
Yeah.
It was owned by John Hancock, who is most famous for, hotels he never owned, his boisterous signature, and of course being responsible for necessitating things called hand checks. Get it? John Hancock, where's your hand check? No? Okay.
Boo.
Anyway, I try with the dad jokes. Tensions escalated further in March 1770 when British troops fired on rock-throwing civilians, killing 5 in what became known as the Boston Massacre. It's widely accepted that the first man killed in the massacre was a man named Crispus Attucks. It's also widely accepted that Crispus Attucks was a free black man, making the first casualty of...
True or false, Joe?
Basically correct. Whether he was the first man killed is arguable. He was killed. Who was first and who was second, nobody really knows. But he was one of the early casualties in the war. Some critics would say most of the mob was drunk. They'd been liquored up by John Adams. But the important thing about the Boston Massacre is that John Adams defended the British soldiers in the trial and said that they should not be found guilty. They were obeying orders. I think the Boston Massacre, in retrospect, was an incident that had nothing directly to do with what was going to come later, which is what I talked about when you get the Tea Party. That's a big time. This is a preliminary event.
Did you ever catch that HBO John Adams with Paul Giamatti?
Absolutely. I was a consultant.
No way.
Oh, wow.
I haven't finished. I never finished it. Not like just.
It's a very good series. It's very well done. It's very well done. Yeah. And the first one of the early episodes is this stat. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what brought it to mind. And Paul Giamatti is amazing in that.
He's good. He's good. He's the son of Bart Giamatti, who was the president of Yale and later the head of the American League.
Good
the war in America, or in American history, I should say, a man of color. And also making him the first person to give his life for freedom in this country that would be forgotten on purpose. History repeats itself. In 1773, a banking crisis, more money, led to the near collapse of East India Company, which dominated the British economy. So to support East India Company, Parliament passed the Tea Act. Sounds like corporate welfare, huh? Giving it a trading monopoly in the 13 colonies. Now, since most American tea was smuggled by the Dutch, yes, my ancestors, the inspiration of all those scoundrels like Han Solo smuggling things across the galaxy.
The scruffy-looking nerf herder.
But the Tea Act was opposed by those who, get this, managed the illegal trade with my forefathers. And it was also seen by the general public as yet another attempt to impose the principle of taxation by Parliament. In December of 1773, the Sons of Liberty protested the Tea Party by disguising themselves as Mohawk natives and dumping crates of tea into the Boston Harbor.
Okay. I'll pause him there.
I've talked about this, but he's right about that. It's the people that were disguising themselves as Mohawk Indians were all members of the Massachusetts militia. A plan had been put in place to do what they did a week beforehand, if in fact the British didn't back down. And Sam Adams gave the order from a church in the middle of Boston at the time, and it went out. They were under orders to destroy all the tea, but to leave nothing else, to do no harm to anything else. They even repaired the locks on the doors to make it clear that they were not a mob of irresponsible people, but they were, in effect, soldiers performing a mission. But this is the decisive event because George III regards himself as someone who's been thrown in like the tea into the ocean, that he's refused, that the colonists have demonstrated that they can't be persuaded to go along with British taxation policy, and that the colonists have committed themselves to a course that they will deeply regret. And from that point forward, George III is the leader of the imperial movement inside Britain, and he owns the seats in Parliament. That is, he has control over about 40 to 50% of the seats in the House of Commons and in House of Lords. And so he knows that he's going to be able to get the Parliament to support his position, which they do. And their confidence at this time is unlimited. They are going to squash these guys. That's when they begin to plan to send the largest amphibious force ever to cross the Atlantic, as I mentioned, 32,000 troops, in order to demonstrate to the Americans that they're not going to be able to successfully defy the rule of Parliament.
So if they had to do it a different way, what do you think that way would have been? Like, if they wanted to still contain the Americas and contain the colonies,
there was an answer there. That you're right to ask the question. Benjamin Franklin is in Paris in London at the time, and he meets with the British government officials on several occasions, and says, "Look, all we're saying is let us have control over our own taxation. We will stay in members of the empire. We will observe the Navigation Acts. We will remain members of the British family." In effect, he's proposing the creation of what will a century later be called the British Commonwealth. And it's a policy that Great Britain in the next century will acknowledge and give to Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. That answer was readily available to the British government, and they rejected it.
Let them eat cake, I guess, but no molasses in that cake. And if you do get molasses, you're gonna pay.
It's later, of course, this impersonating a group of people of color to trigger public perception of that group was mastered by the phenomenon of blackface, done by the minstrel shows owners, who said, impersonating Indians, their word, not mine, "Hold my beer." So after the Boston Tea Party, which, of course, the right-wing McCarthy-led Republicans would garner the name of their far-right group from 2 centuries later, the Parliament passed the Coercive Acts and the Quebec Act, those two things together, which gave more rights to Catholics, did the Quebec Act, and in hindsight, that just might be kind of intolerable. But anyway, these acts were dubbed the Intolerable Acts by the colonists. These laws were meant to punish and took away the self-governance and rights Massachusetts had enjoyed since its founding, triggering outrage in the 13 colonies. For how dare anyone impose restrictions on a blue-blooded and soon-to-be red-blooded white fellow? In September of 1774, colonists organized the first Continental Congress to coordinate a protest and impose a boycott on goods from Middle Earth, such as magic beans. I mean England and magic beans. So as tensions escalated, the American Revolutionary War broke out in April of 1775 with the battles of Lexington and Concord. An effort known as the Olive Branch Petition was drawn up by so-called moderates in Congress, which attempted to avoid war by doing what moderates do, playing both sides for their own gain.
Okay, so
nobody was suggesting that the alleged Mohawk Indians were in blackface or anything like that. I don't know what he's talking about, but
I think he's referring to the minstrel shows, like
later.
Later on, how they would portray it.
I think one of the things that, and he's right, the Continental Congress comes into existence in response to the Intolerable Acts or the Coercive Acts. What is amazing about it, though, is, and in retrospect, we have to recover this, there was no national ethos in the United States. There was not something called the United States. people didn't think of themselves as Americans. They thought of themselves as New Englanders or Virginians or Carolinians. And therefore, the united response, the common cause or the cause response to support their brethren in Massachusetts is kind of remarkable. They're coming together in the First Continental Congress and agreeing that they're going to refuse to abide by British law. Now, notice, there's a 15-month separation between Lexington and Concord in April of 75 and the Declaration of Independence in July of 76. The colonists, and he somewhat makes fun of the people who conceive themselves as moderates, they're all moderates at that stage. Nobody wants war.
Right.
Because they're not sure they have a chance at winning it. And therefore, one of the most forgotten paragraphs in the Declaration of Independence, written by Jefferson, says, "Prudence dictates that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient reasons." They basically are crossing the Rubicon and halting and saying, let's give the British a chance to come to their senses.
Right.
Let's allow George III, his ministry and parliament, to recognize that this is an unwinnable war. Let's give them an opportunity to realize that the United States is not like Ireland or Scotland. We got this thing called the Atlantic Ocean. We're 10 times larger than both of them put together. And this is a people numerous and armed. Let them digest that.
Right.
We will not go to war. We will not declare independence until we're absolutely certain we have no alternative. And that's what they do. And I'm sure that the commentator is going to come on now and tell us what happens in the summer of 76. But that if you're looking for the specific motive, the people had to end up voting for independence because they're in the process of being invaded by a British army.
This, however, was rejected by the British. Stop me when this sounds familiar, as they negotiated a petition, but then said to piss off. In fact, it's reported that our friend of the show, Wayne Maker himself, exclaimed, "Fuck those American cunts." But that's not confirmed. Anyway, so this led to the July 1775 Declaration of the Causes and Necessity to Take Up Arms, apparently written by Thomas Jefferson, disputed, which laid out the decade-long list of grievances of the colonists, of course, explained that their pleas were constantly being ignored and rejected, and stated that even though the Crown had been mobilized against them, he mobilized the military against them, even though they still wanted unity. The colonists wanted to be part of the mother country. Jefferson wrote this: "The legislature of Great Britain stimulated," actually, let's do this in the voice of Jefferson. What do you say?
Oh, no.
And I did paraphrase this slightly because he used a lot of old English terms and only Wayne would understand. But anyway, the legislature of Great Britain, stimulated by an inordinate passion for power, which is not only unjustifiable, but which they all...
Okay. Do we know that that's how they used to talk back then? Do we know how they used to talk back then?
No. I've done some with actors playing in the play 1776 and replicators in Williamsburg, and many of them are convinced they know what kind of accent, say, Jefferson had. And there are linguists who write books about this that claim to know. The answer is we don't know.
There's no way.
Did he have a Southern accent? Did he have a British accent?
Was there a Southern accent at the time?
Was there a Southern accent? The answer is we don't know.
In my head,
I mean, if you're going to play him in a production or as a replication, the guy that plays him most successfully is a guy called Clay Jenkinson. He's out of North Dakota, believe it or not. And he's been doing it for 20 years. And what he does, it's a simple answer. He says, I'm not going to try to talk like Jefferson. I'm going to talk like me. I don't try to pretend that I know the answer to this. So he talks 21st century American English. But no, we don't know the answer to that. And but he's gotten us to the point. What I want you to recognize is that it becomes important as the war proceeds. There is this commitment to come together to defend Massachusetts and then to defend the colonies in general against this looming invasion. But the presumption from the beginning is this is a temporary and provisional unity.
Right.
That we are the first sentence in the most famous speech in American history is historically incorrect. 77 years ago, that is in 1776, Lincoln says from Gettysburg in 1863, 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation. No, they didn't.
Right.
They brought forth a confederation of sovereign states provisionally united to come together and win the war and then go their separate ways, which is pretty much what they did.
Like a Marvel team up movie.
Well, and it was even to the point where the first draft of the Constitution wasn't the Constitution; it was the Articles of Confederation.
That's right. The first Constitution is something called the Articles of Confederation. It's formally approved it's drafted in 1777, but it takes a long time to get ratified because after all, there's a war going on. And it vests sovereignty in the states.
Yeah.
And even over foreign policy, every state has its own foreign policy. You cannot tax a state at the federal level. They don't have to pay taxes to the federal government. They have to pay state taxes, but nothing beyond that. And I think that it's important, again, for the listeners to recognize that the average American in the 1760s and 70s was born, grew up, and died within a 3-day horse ride. They didn't think nationally. They thought locally. And it's one of the reasons the support for the Continental Army was so limited. And it's one of the reasons that they weren't able to recruit a large force for the Continental Army. And it's one of the reasons at the end of the war, they're not going to come together in a nation. That's not going to happen until 7 years on the Constitution. And I'm getting ahead of the story here, but it's crucial to know this, to know what's coming. Because they don't have a national government, it is now going to be impossible to put slavery on the road to extinction and to reach a just accommodation with the Native Americans. Impossible politically, because it's not going to be something the federal government has any authority to do.
Also know to be peculiarly against the very constitution of that kingdom. We have had no success in any mode of contest where regard should be had to the truth, law, or right. They have at length deserted us and attempted to effect their cruel purpose of enslaving these colonies. Enslaving.
Yeah.
Thereby, it is rendered it necessary for us to change our appeals from reasoning with them to taking up arms against them, sir. Finally, a year later, in July of 1776, the Declaration of an Independent United States of America was signed. And a few years after that,
wasn't really signed on that day.
On themselves, or
wasn't it in August by the time it was signed by everybody?
August 2nd was most of them signed, but there were people signing it in September and October.
Yeah.
There's never a single signing day.
Man.
July 4th is celebrated because that's the date the printer put on it when it got to his office. The vote on independence actually occurred on July 2nd. And John Adams, writing to Abigail on July 3rd, said, yesterday will be the day we celebrate with He even got the fireworks right. Parade. He got the date wrong because he thought it would be the date they voted on independence. When they sent it to the printer on July 4th, one representative this gives you a sense of the feeling at the moment. Benjamin Harrison from Virginia says to his colleague from Massachusetts, Elbridge Gerry, after whom gerrymandering will be named, said, "Mr. Gerry, I am lucky because I am fat. And when they catch me and they hang me, I will die quickly. And when they catch you and hang you, you will twist in the wind for many minutes." They did think on the 4th that once they sent it out to the world, they were risking, as the document says, their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. They had to be all in.
So this is treason, right? Against the crown
Yes,
at
treason,
that point?
it's treason.
Oh yeah, for sure. And they all knew it too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And if they got caught, they would be sent back to England. There'd be a show trial. They'd be found guilty. They'd be hung in public, then quartered, and their head would be put on spits in Westminster to stay there for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and even and you know, even their officers in the Continental Army, like Washington was a British soldier before he was an American general. Like same thing with Yates and all the other officers. Like, you know, they were literally betraying the British Army to join the Continental Army.
Well, Washington was never given a commission in the British Army. He wanted to get one, but he didn't. He was an American militia leader that was part of served under the British during the French and Indian War. You're right about the two mentioned, Gates and with the other one you mentioned. There were some former British officers who joined the American Army.
Yeah,
the veteran type people. That's true. But most of the leading officers in the Continental Army were people that might have served in the militia beforehand, but there were people like Nathaniel Greene, who becomes the best general in the Washington's army. He's a Quaker. He never fought in the war, and he's a private. And the next day, he's a general. Could have never happened in the British Army. You know,
yeah, it's just a lateral move, you know, private to general.
Well,
it's
like
the
General,
same thing.
General Knox is head of artillery. He's a bookstore owner in Boston. And Washington does have a keen eye for talent, and when he sees a guy like Hamilton, he promotes him very quickly and that kind of thing. But that if you watch a movie or a series like Band of Brothers, one of the things that's good about that is it shows you how a military unit over the course of a war self-selects its leaders, because some people are going to be leaders and others are not. You can't tell at the beginning of the war. Over time, they eventually emerge, and that's what happens. By the end of the war, the Americans have an army as good as the British Army because they're experienced. But by that time, they didn't need to fight anymore.
All right, let's finish this up with Dutchman Select Paints and get on with the show.
Call themselves the greatest nation on earth. And that, my friends, is what we are here to discuss. Thanks, guys. Peace out. I will see you next week. Enjoy discussing this.
Oh,
well,
good.
I mean,
it's over.
Remember, it's not a nation. It's not a nation yet.
It's a confederacy.
It's the Confederacy in 1860-61 had the better of the constitutional argument. I mean, I don't mean they had the better of the argument about slavery by any stretch.
Right.
But the original intention of the revolution was to create a confederation rather than a nation. And in fact, Jefferson went to his grave believing we were never a nation, that we were all, and that the states were sovereign. So in the book that I've written, at the end, it talks about legacies, and the subtitle of the book is the cause, the American Revolution, and its discontents. The phrase is a phrase I'm getting from Freud, civilization and its discontents. What do I mean? I mean, we could have won the war quicker if we had gotten the army that we needed and it had the manpower and the demography to provide. But in addition, that the end of the war essentially sets up the two great tragedies of the American founding. The end of the American founding has got numerous triumphs, the first of which is to win the successful war against the major military power in the world. No small feat. Later on, to become the first nation-sized republic, the first nation that separates church and state, the first nation that divides sovereignty. But there are two tragedies that are part of this, and they can't be separated from it. One is slavery. There is no doubt, and this is true in the minds of slaveholders like Washington and Jefferson and Madison and Patrick Henry, that the cause is incompatible with slavery. They all said that. They knew it. And the opportunity to end slavery, this is where things, if they're going to do it, they had to do it relatively quickly.
Right.
Because the numbers were growing and they missed it.
Yeah.
And that the second tragedy was the failure to reach a just accommodation with the Native Americans. I think that the argument we need to have that's interesting, because it's argued, both sides can claim some plausibility here. Was slavery a Greek tragedy or a Shakespearean tragedy?
What's the difference?
A Greek tragedy is built in, it's embedded. Sic volvere parcas, 'tis the will of the gods. No amount of leadership could have changed it. A Shakespearean tragedy is the opposite. It's capable of being resolved. It's a function of agency. Leadership it would have required great leadership. I think the Native American tragedy is a Greek tragedy. Once you win the war and you send those, and the whites can pursue their happiness going across the Alleghenies, it's going to be really tough. And they're bringing diseases with them that the Native American population has no immunities to.
Right. That's
arguable, but that's my view. I think slavery is a Shakespearean tragedy. And the next book will be about why that is the case. But this book ends with you knowing that this tragedy looms. And I think that slavery is the original sin of American history, and racism is its enduring toxic residue. And it's still with us, as we well know. I think ending the slavery early would have avoided the Civil War. Whether or not it would have killed racism is a different question.
Now, hold on. I was told on Facebook that since Obama was president, this is a post-racial America. There is no such thing as racism.
That's right.
anymore.
That's right.
So...
In fact, just the opposite is true. Every step forward, and Obama is the most recent step forward, produces a racial backlash. When Obama was elected, you should have expected Donald Trump.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was. That Trump is inexplicable without Obama. After the revolution, because slavery is now being threatened, emancipation programs throughout all the northern states, Virginia allowing owners to free their slaves, having the largest free slave population in the United States. It looks like, this is right at the end of the war, that slavery is going to be eventually done in. And that very possibility generates a racial backlash, because the next question is, what happens to the freed blacks?
Right.
If you live in a northern state where there is a small minority, segregation is the appropriate answer. They can't vote, they can't serve in the militia, and they can't serve on juries, and they can't live in white neighborhoods. If you live in Virginia or the Carolinas, where they're 40 to 60% of the population, even segregation is unacceptable. And the only answer is what Jefferson calls, what has he called it? It means deporting them all. We have to send them back either to Africa. His preference is Santo Domingo. But that originally some people thought maybe the West, but he said, no, that's where we're going to put the Indians. what I'm saying is the very possibility of emancipation as a legitimate expression of the cause is what generates a racial backlash. The same thing's going to happen after the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. That's when you get Jim Crow and the lynching. The same thing happens after the passage of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act of 65. That's when you get the Southern strategy of the Republican Party. No Democratic candidate for president since 1965 has ever won a majority of the white vote. Think about that.
It's also like
built-in racial residue that gets called out every time there's the step forward, and it begins with the American Revolution.
And from what I understand, isn't that when most of like the Confederate statues went up was around the time of the civil rights? Like they're not like relics from like back 5 years after the Civil War. This stuff came up in like the 1940s.
They're a little earlier than that. Most of them are late 19th, early 20th century. Yeah. Which is really there's more racism after slavery ends, because after all, if they're all enslaved, we don't have to worry about them. And but the amount my advisor at Yale initially was a guy called C. Van Woodward, wrote a great book called The Strange Career of Jim Crow, and it is like the height of racism. Well, we don't have a Geiger counter to measure racism, but in the former Confederacy, it's after the Civil War, because the threat that free blacks pose to whites is what drives it, and that's of course when you get the Klan and you get lynching and everything, and members of Congress, many members of Congress up and through the 1920s and 30s and 40s were members of the Klan. So it's a given. And the conclusion that Joe Ellis says we should reach is that the American narrative is morally irresolvable. The people that think that the narrative of American history is a great triumph, they're wrong. But the people on the other side who say that American history is only about racism, classism, sexism, great failure, they're wrong too. Because the same nation that didn't end slavery fought the Civil War, the bloodiest war in its history, to end slavery based on the principles of the American Revolution. And in my judgment, Martin Luther King was right in August of 1963 to say, well, on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, I have come to collect on a promissory note written by Thomas Jefferson. The values of the revolution and the cause are the values of the civil rights movement.
So one real quick comment from Isla. Hi, Isla from the Bikerian podcast. She's in the chat there. Slaves and women were appliances, not people. Yep.
Slaves and women were what?
Appliances, not people.
Appliances. They were property. That's what they would call it. It's property. Yeah.
Tim, anything you want to add real quick? I got a couple of notes, but I'm going to hog it.
I don't really have any notes. I would just say that, the North wasn't great when it came to free blacks after the war. Connecticut has its own crazy history of racism, and I do have one question, and this always sort of bothered me. It's not about racism or anything, but what was Rhode Island's deal during the Constitutional Convention?
Rhode Island was a troublemaker. Rhode Island was sitting it all out. I always said, my son went to Brown, my eldest son, and if you notice, until fairly recently, you lived in Massachusetts and you wanted to get to Providence, Rhode Island, it was hard to sell because they didn't have any roads going down there. And that was designed to be that way, because early in the history of Massachusetts, Rhode Island is a place where you sent all the witches and the Quakers and all the crazy people. But during the Revolution, during the Constitution, they sat it out, and they refused to ratify as well for quite some time. And Rhode Island was tied into the slavery issue because it was a major port And the industry of Providence, Rhode Island, and Newport was heavily given to the slave trade. And so there were people in Providence, Rhode Island, that were very reluctant supporters of anti-slavery legislation.
All the way up in Rhode Island?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, the history of Brown came. There's a woman president of Brown 5-10 years ago required a historical study, and my gosh, almost all the early leaders in Brown were connected to all kinds of slave trade, and the history of Brown is complicated, to put it mildly.
Yeah, New England wasn't free of the slave trade.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Big Haas, what's up, homie?
What's going on, y'all? How you feeling?
Good. Big Haas, Joe, Big Haas.
Big Haas.
How you doing?
I'm hanging together out here in Vermont, but remember, it's 3 hours later out here.
I know. And you out there in Bernie country too.
I told him it's snowing hard right now.
There you go.
So just to respect your time, I'll lightning round a couple of questions for you. Since you are a historian, what is the system of government that the United States uses? Because I always get like we're a federalist republic, we're a democracy, we're this, we're that. What is the historian's answer to what type of government is the United States?
It's a republic. It's a republic with a democratic foundation that all republics have. But from a founder's point of view, a republic means what in Latin, res publica, things of the public. The sovereign entity in a republic is not the people. It's the public.
Right.
The public is the long-term interest of the people, which at any given moment, a majority of the people by polling would not understand.
Right.
And so if you're a representative in the 18th century government, you think you're taking an oath oftentimes to vote for things that are unpopular. Like Adams could have won the presidency in 1800 if he'd gone to war with France, but he refuses to do that. In fact, I think that if you took a vote on the Constitution in 1787 among all the registered voters, it would have lost 2-1.
Yeah.
I mean, even in the beginning of World War II, 91% of the Americans were isolationists.
Right.
Now, Pearl Harbor does a lot to turn people around, to be sure, but the only reason we could go to war is because Hitler declared war on us
for helping the British.
Well, but they had an alliance. No, they had an alliance with the Japanese.
Okay.
And what we're faced with here in the present is the word democracy has come to mean and understood to mean representative government. And that's not totally wrong. But in an 18th century context, democracy was an epithet. You called someone a Democrat when you wanted to put him down. A Democrat was somebody that dealt with swoonish swings of public opinion. He was a potential demagogue. Cicero, orations on Catiline, tried to train the rising generation against these kind of demagogues. Democracies are vulnerable to swoonish swings in popular opinion. And the job of an elected representative in a Republican government is to take an oath to the Constitution, which means an oath to a higher law, not just to what the pollsters tell you. Okay?
Right.
And I can't think of too many members of the current Senate or House of Representatives that would pass that list or pass that litmus test.
Of being like almost strict like constitutionalists, because like
like their highest obligation is to be reelected. The first person they talk to when they decide to run for office is their potential financial supporters. The second person is their opposition research people.
So what do you think? And this is a reoccurring thing with guests. What do you think about like campaign finance as it stands, or any ways that can be adjusted or fixed?
I think that the decision to the Supreme Court decision that allowed corporations to give unlimited amounts of money is the second worst Supreme Court decision in American history. First worst is the 1857 decision. What is it? Dred Scott.
Yeah.
Dred Scott. That's a bad one.
I mean, I think that when the current head of the Senate, the former head of the Senate, the current Republican leader, gave a lecture in University of Louisville.
Oh, Mitch McConnell.
Mitch McConnell. In the first lecture, he said, "Now there are three things you have to know about American politics. And I'm going to write them on the board: money, money, and money."
He's not wrong,
and he's right. And I think one thing we should argue for, you know how when you're looking at TV and while they're telling the news, they're running the sports stores or the weather. When somebody's talking about a bill, that should run where that person got his money from.
A little ticker tape on the bottom.
Yeah. When somebody gets up to talk about the Second Amendment, how they believe in the Second Amendment, how much money did he get from the NRA?
Yeah, they call it a crawl.
Yeah. I would like to see that.
Some of them would have longer crawls than others.
I always thought
very small print and go very fast.
I always thought they should have to wear their sponsors on them like they were NASCAR cars.
There you go. They get little patches for their suits.
Yeah,
I'm with all of that. And we talked about a little bit before the show got started, but your thoughts on like the Electoral College, and then if you have time, the filibuster.
The Electoral College was decided in August of 1787. Nobody when they left the convention was happy with it. It was a compromise between big states and small states, and between Confederationists or states' writers and Confederationists on the one side or nationalists on the other. Madison wrote to Jefferson, who was in Paris, said, "I've just walked away. We've just made a big mistake, and I'm not sure we can recover from it." He's talking about the Electoral College. I think if I talk to the founders every day because I read all their papers, and they've been talking to me about the Electoral College, and they said, we can't believe you should have done away with this 100 years ago.
Yeah.
There's been a scholarly study done of attempts to revise the Constitution. No single issue has been attempted more than to get rid of the Electoral College. There's been over 200 attempts to do it, and all of them have failed, in part because most of the small states, to include Rhode Island and Vermont, but as well, let's put it this way: North Dakota and South Dakota together have 4 senators, and they have a population 1/5 as large as Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
sounds fair.
And they're not going to want to change the Electoral College, the Senate. The Electoral College is a function of the undemocratic character of the Senate. So I am very much in favor of doing away with it. And I also think that there's another new reason to want to do away with it. All the attempts now being run by the Republicans to claim voter fraud and then do voter fraud of their own are dependent upon the complexity of the electoral vote and the Electoral College, which if you try to figure out how that happens in each state, it's complicated.
Yeah.
And let's do away with the complications. Majority vote. Right now, the Republican Party will never permit that to happen
because they'll lose everything.
because they would lose every election. They haven't won a popular vote since Bush's second term.
Yeah, and that was like they've only won the popular vote once since the year 2000.
That's what I'm talking about. That's
right.
So that's the reason it's. I mean, most of the things I think are obvious and need to be done, and most of the founders would cheer us to do, are politically impossible. And there is nothing in the Constitution about the filibuster. The filibuster comes into existence in the 19th century primarily as a device by the slavocracy to block legislation on slavery. It stays in existence in the 20th century, again, with Southern states leading the way to prevent legislation on civil rights. So it's got a pretty bad history here. Its positive history is only available in film. Jimmy Stewart.
Right.
Mr. Stewart and Mr. Washington, whatever he goes
to Washington.
Yeah. There he's fighting for a noble cause. But there are three issues that the Constitution says require a supermajority vote by the Senate. Overturning a presidential veto, passing a constitutional amendment, and approving a treaty. I think going to war is also in there, though we haven't gone to war the way the Constitution says since December 8th, 1941. They don't do it that way anymore.
Yeah,
they
the Congress
to the president. Yeah,
the Congress is supposed to declare war.
That's right. That's right. And but what I'm saying is that everything else is supposed to be, every piece of legislation other than those is supposed to be a straight majority vote. So I think that the cloture policy, which allows a single congressman to press a button and turn it into a 60 vote requirement, is unconstitutional and would require a constitutional amendment to go into existence. And why the hell somebody hasn't tried to make this case, I don't know.
Well, we'll have to pitch it to all of our up and coming candidates that have been starring on the show, and some of the ones that have already been back or have already been here, because it's for people of my generation and of my age, it is very disheartening to give a damn about politics when you see all of the very petty and obvious, not even cloak and dagger, but just right in your face of them just not counting votes. And me and all of my friends all voted and we won our county and we did so good and we did this whole campaign. No, but your state still loses because there's like, I don't know, 1 billion acres of farmland that has more of a voice than you do. That empty patch of grass has more of a say than you. Those rutabagas over there, they outvoted you guys. Sorry.
Yeah, well, one of the underlying, this is my interpretation. I don't want to. When the current Republicans claim that they won the election, or when they claim there's been voter fraud in states like Texas and Georgia, what they really mean is that people like you aren't supposed to vote.
What you voting for?
Yeah, you're not supposed to vote. Like, what is this for voting? And that's what they're really saying.
Stop voting already.
So don't not vote, for God's sakes, because that's what they're trying to do. But that's when you're looking for the core of the Trump constituency and you're trying to explain how a man so mentally, emotionally, and morally impaired could possibly have this level of support, the underlying reason is he plays the race card down.
Yep.
And they all know what he's talking about. And you people aren't supposed to vote.
Yeah. And heaven forbid, did you just say that was racist, what he did?
America's not a racist country.
That is reverse racism, and I am offended.
That is not who we are.
It's reverse
who we are.
It's reverse racism for you to call out my racism. I don't like how it makes me feel, and I want to see your manager. All right. Do you have time for a quick game? I know it's getting kind of late over there. I'm in Chicagoland, so I'm right there with you. All right.
What's a game?
Perfect. All right, it's time for 4 down territory, which is where I'm not going to do your ridiculous. I know you're. Where's my camera? You, Dutch. I'm not doing your ridiculous audible, so forget it.
Yes.
Hut, hike.
It was kind of ridiculous, I must say.
Ridiculous. But this is where we ask you for softball softball questions to get to know you as a person, as opposed to just like as an author. Like,
All
what's
right.
your favorite ice cream? Like, very, very simple stuff. Big house.
I'm still getting my feet, my sea legs.
I apologize.
I got you though.
There you go.
Star Trek or Star Wars?
Ooh.
Star Wars.
Why?
I love Captain Kirk.
But that would be Star
Oh,
Trek.
excuse me. That would get the other way around, isn't it? Yes. Star Trek is what I'm saying. I messed up.
Now, do you love Captain Kirk because he was such a ladies' man, or does it?
No, I love him because of. It shows I'm dated. You know, I admired. I think too because that program at the time was breaking more barriers in terms of understanding space than anything later. You know, that's from the 60s, and so it introduced me at a tender age to that whole universe that I wouldn't have thought of otherwise.
Okay, I feel you. I like that.
All right, Tim, hit it.
Who would have won in a fight, George Washington or Thomas Jefferson?
Ooh.
You mean a real fight?
Yeah, if they got into like fisticuffs, who would have won?
Oh, no question. Washington would have killed him. Washington was the equivalent of an Olympic athlete. Washington was the best rider in Virginia. He was 6'2", 6'3" and a quarter and 205 pounds when he died.
Oh, he would have worked Jefferson.
He's the only man to throw a rock over the across the river. He didn't throw a rock across the Potomac, because if you've ever seen where that was, that would have been physically impossible. But now, if you want to look like young Washington was like John Wayne circa Stagecoach, 1939. And Jefferson was tall, slender, but not athletic, not strong physically, and a bit of a wimp.
Tim, you just put Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson against Bill Nye the Science Guy. How dare you?
In what combat are they engaged?
I hope it was like 4D chess or something. Like, give them.
The combat I was going to put them in is just like a fist fight.
Yeah. Well,
that
yeah.
would have been bad.
No question
bad
who
news.
wins that one.
Bad news for him. All right. All right. We'll make you pick an easy one here. Marvel or DC?
Marvel.
Yeah.
I guess I'm influenced by the recent stuff, the films, but Marvel.
Which are very good.
Yeah, they are.
DC makes good comics. They make good like cartoon shows, but Marvel's got the movies down locked.
Yeah, they do. You see how much money those actors are making for that?
Not much, right?
Oh, no, a lot. Like, one of the actresses sued him because he didn't, but she was making something like $17 million for one.
That was my girl, Black Widow.
Scarlett Johansson.
That's right.
Scojo. All right, Big House.
I get to ask another one?
Another one.
Oh shit, I appreciate you.
Another one.
Okay. What is your favorite song of all time?
My favorite what?
Song.
That's not fair.
Sinatra singing Night and Day.
Classic.
I have to look that up.
I know that's dated, but that's what it is.
Hey, I didn't ask for your contemporary.
That's who it is. Who's my favorite football team? The Patriots.
Boo.
Oh, you poor guy.
I know that's not going to go off very well. There it is. And
but you're in Vermont, so what do you expect?
I'm in Vermont, yeah, and from Massachusetts before that. But we've been spoiled up here, and that they've done a lot better this year than anybody thought they would.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But yeah, biggest mistake in the history of football was letting Brady go.
Oh, whatever. They didn't have the horses. They didn't have the
That's
horses.
true. Well, that's what they should have done. Get them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brady wasn't staying there with that broke down team.
Yeah.
He would probably come back now because they got some horses.
Well, no, he's got some horses down there.
Oh yeah, that's why he went to a team that was ready made.
If I was in Chicago, I'd probably be having a heart attack.
Oh, don't get us started.
Like,
don't get us started. We
I
got
watched
the
them
horses,
lose
but
two games that
the
they
dude
should
that's
have won.
riding the horse is a freaking idiot.
Yeah.
The guy that's riding the horse is an idiot. When I'm sitting at home and it's 3rd and 6, and I say, okay, here comes the bubble screen, and I'm sitting at the crib, that tells you what kind of coach you got.
Mm-hmm.
Haas is like prepping dinner for the night. He's like cutting up peppers and he's calling the plays without even looking at the TV.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, it's 3rd and 8. We're gonna run up the middle.
Yeah.
Run up the middle.
QB draw.
Right. Oh no.
All right, guys, listen up. I think I gotta go, man. And
Hey,
is it okay with you
it was
if
a
I cut
pleasure.
out? And I was trying to think of some questions to ask you, but I can't ask to all 4 people. But the question, I guess, is, can you combine the style that you want to convey in this program
Can we?
with a seriousness of purpose that is quite real and quite deep? That's a hard thing to do. I think you can, and I think there are moments in the program when I think I saw that. But that I want your listeners to be able to latch on to the rhythms and to the fun, but be carried into something that makes them think about things in a way they hadn't in mind before.
Oh.
Is that a goal that you have?
100%. 100%.
Okay. All right.
And I think there are about every 4th episode you get a lot of that.
Okay.
But we'll try to be more. We'll try to do it more for you, Joe.
All right. No, you did it. You did it. And take a look at the book I wrote. I write books that people can read. I mean, a lot of historians who claim to be interested in recovering ordinary Americans don't know how to write books that ordinary Americans can read.
That is true.
It's really
there
true.
are a lot of books that historians write that people can't read.
And that's how they get tenure, and they talk to each other in conferences. And I was pretty good in foreign languages, but I never learned academies. And
that is rough. That is rough.
So I think I learned how to tell a story, and my teaching over years at places made me realize what people could hear and what they couldn't hear. And I hope that's in the book. And so just give it a look. If they've given you a complimentary copy, if they haven't, tell me and I'll have them send you one. And but it's like a lot of the people that I taught, and even my own kids, don't think that anything happened before they were born.
Oh, wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And because of the internet and because of Google and stuff, they think they've got in their hands, they don't have to remember anything because they can just call it up. And so I'm saying there's a whole world back there that you need to learn about. And if you expand your memory back in time, you're going to be confronted with problems. Marital problems, women problems, men problems, political problems, that you're going to be able to have a reservoir of information about how other people who lived this earth and dealt with some of those problems handled it. And we're all going to, we all come into this place the same way, and we all go out the same way. And people that lived 150 or 200 years ago still have something to teach us. And I think the founders have a lot to teach us. So this is a plea for reading history. And even reading is hard to persuade them to do these days. The syllabi I was teaching at Williams at the end of my career was required half as much reading as the syllabus I started with at Yale at the beginning of my career. They just can't read anything. And it's a hard thing to make them do, but if you have to read it on a screen, that's okay by me, as long as you read. And this is a plea for people, not just to read my book, but to read books.
Read again.
Yeah.
And it's funny because that in high school and right after high school, for like the 3-4 years after, I probably consumed 2 or 3 books a month. Just bored. Just like, oh, okay, this guy's got a new one. Grab that, grab that. But that's when Barnes and Noble was a thing, and you could just go there, grab a coffee, you pick up a couple of things, then you come on home. But like, I don't know if it was because like in my area, like the Barnes and Nobles just started disappearing, and
they're still in existence. But the last one, 65% of the book sales in America now come through Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
you know, and that shouldn't be, but it is. Any way you can get it, don't steal it. But so that's my final plea here.
So and one time for the people just listening at home, I have it here on the bottom of the screen. You can go to http://www.josephellishistorian.com/books.html, and that'll take you straight to his website, straight to where his books are. They're available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, iTunes, Google Play, everything. You'll be able to pick up his work.
That's true. So not going to tell you everything about me because I'm going to keep my secrets, but
we're not
thank you for that. And thanks for letting me participate in the conversation. The guy that was on for a while is a bit of a nutcase.
I appreciate that.
That's all right. And take care wherever you are. And thanks for letting me listen. Let me say a few things and maybe get some people interested in reading American history.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll catch you later.
Take care now.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Oh.
Whoa, what is this view? There we go. Oh, hold on. You like it?
Oh.
Well, there you go, guys. All right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to remove Joe. Joe just closed his laptop, so he would have been in the back room for like 5 minutes while I continued to try to reconnect. And I don't know what that's going to do to this stream. Sorry, Joe. Had to do it. So he was cool.
Yeah, that was cool.
I don't know how Dutch keeps finding and convincing these people to come on to the show.
Right.
I don't know what he has on him. Money.
I don't know.
Debts. Yeah.
Hey, but keep doing it.
Well,
you won a Pulitzer Prize. That's pretty crazy.
That's really cool. You
Right.
know what else is really cool?
Welcome to the Humidor with Big Haas. Find out what Haas is puffing and drinking tonight. If you try his suggestion and you die, that is natural selection. And the DOA podcast is not responsible for you being weak fucking sauce. So now, the one, the only, Big Haas.
Big house, a lice, a ding dong. What you drinking? What you smoking? I need to do like an old 70s. Like,
oh shit! There you go again.
Old stinger from like back in the 70s. Big house. What you drinking and smoking? Jenna, we're gonna have to get together and record some tracks because it's gonna take multi layers. Get the harmonies just right.
Well, today I am smoking on a little, I guess you would call it a boutique cigar. It's not like a major, it's not necessarily from a major manufacturer. This is called The Stolen Throne, Crook of the Crown. I love the label. I love the band. Look at that.
Is that a raven?
Yes. And it's sitting on top of a crown. I mean,
Yep.
look at this. Look at this dark chocolate wrapper.
You got the Wesley Snipes.
Look
No,
at
you said
that.
rapper. You got the Meek Mills of
Look at that.
cigars.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's got a little sheen to it. It's got the veins that I like. Look at that. Look at those pronounced veins right there.
Mm.
Look at that.
That's what he likes. That's what
Yeah,
he
this is the
likes.
Toro Vitola, which is 6x52.
And the ring gauge is what? Now that I've been lied to and been running around telling people
It's
wrong shit.
52 64. It's 52 64.
Got me over here lying like a motherfucker.
Mm-hmm. Oh God, this is a fucking good cigar. I wish I bought more of them. I got this. Okay, cigar etiquette. All right, now when I go to a cigar lounge, right, it is always good etiquette to purchase a cigar from the lounge you're smoking at. Don't just go and smoke your own. You could have smoked your own at home without, supporting the lounge you go to. So I always buy at least two. And this is one of the two I bought. Now, what I do is this. I bring mine. I buy two to support the lounge.
And then you smoke yours?
I smoke mine because I like to let mine rest. I like to let them rest at least a week. So I had this one, well, almost a week in my humidor. And it is phenomenal. It looks like a triple cap.
No cap.
I don't know if you can see it there, but it's a triple cap, which means like with the deep V or a straight cut, which are one of the two most popular cuts, the V cut and the straight cut. Sometimes you'll cut, if it's a single cap, you can cut off, what does that say? Wow. So you wouldn't like me much.
Jesus. Why?
Sometimes with a straight cut or a deep V cut, you can cut the cap if it's a single cap and it'll unravel on you. The cigar will unravel sometimes. With a triple cap, it's a safeguard against that. So you're kind of safe with you could be liberal with your cut. You don't have to be as diligent in where you're cutting it and things like that. So I actually cut mine with a V, but I cut it crooked, so it ended up like this. And so on this side, it's down lower than actually on this side, the way I cut it. But that's okay. I'm still getting a pretty good draw. For a tightly rolled cigar, the draw is surprisingly moderate. I don't have to pull hard to, get a little bit of smoke to caress my tongue.
Smoking out the window.
So this is I'm sorry. The wrapper is a 10-year-old, it's a 10-year age San Andreas Maduro wrapper. Okay. The fillers are from Dutch,
Nicaragua.
and in a surprise, Indonesia.
Oh, come on, man.
Yes. I think this might be the first cigar I've ever had that has tobaccos from Indonesia. Who is washing dishes?
Tim's got some loud sounds going. I got you, Tim.
So this is a full body cigar. It's like a medium plus strength.
Hell yeah.
Okay.
Plus size.
A lot. I wish I had more of these too, because it has, and I can taste it. It has a lot of like espresso or coffee bean, some black pepper, some cream to it. And
I'm gonna do this on there. Keep going. I'll be right back.
The wrapper has a sweetness to it. You can taste it on your tongue. you know, and there's a little bit. Let me see. Hold on. Yep. It's got a little leather to it, and a little bit of some type of nut. So really amazing cigar. I have it paired today with Sprecher ginger beer and Casamigos tequila.
Got yourself a burro.
So the sweetness of the ginger beer plays against the you know how tequila hits you. It plays against that very well. It kind of evens it out. And
I'm not allowed to have tequila after the incident.
you take a little swig, you take a little puff, and you get a an enhanced sweetness on the inhale. But then as you let the smoke waft over your tongue and come out, you get a little bit more of the black pepper spice. And I don't know if that's the ginger and tequila playing off each other, but it's really good.
We now interrupt this broadcast for a special news bulletin. Big House, I want you to take a look at the screen right here. This one bottle is your Christmas present.
What is that?
This is
Bourbon County Cherry Wood Straight or Stout.
Yes.
Ooh.
They Goose Island puts these out once a year on Black Friday. They are dollars a bottle, and there's always a limit of one.
Well, you only get one?
Yeah. And everybody sells out of them like within the day.
How big is the bottle?
It is a
Is it like a?
There's
a growler. It looks like a 16-ounce bottle.
Yeah, it looks like it's a pint tops.
Maybe 1 pint.
There you go.
Yeah, it's a pint.
Ooh, leather and lace.
I bought one for myself. I had the classic cola stout, which is
I like how you think, Isla.
She's amazing. But this is all for you whipping me into shape.
Okay, we haven't been here in a minute. I've been trying to hit you up. What's up? You've been ducking me.
Ain't no ducking. Mug's been at work nonstop because
I understand that.
Because everyone on the planet has COVID. Am I right, Tim?
Oh, yeah. I'm one of them.
Yeah.
Oh, damn, Tim.
They got Tim.
Yeah. I got the COVIDs. So remember last week when I thought I had a non-COVID related cold? It was COVID.
It was COVID related.
Yeah.
The COVID related.
I've been in quarantine since Thursday. This is my bedroom.
I see.
I have my laptop, which is why I have the shitty sound.
And you got your Brett Michaels scarf. I like it.
Yeah.
Well, you got a Brett Michaels, my man, like that.
Got the Brett Michaels. What was the name of his show where he was trying to find love?
Oh, it was
oh God.
For the love of Brett?
No. Fuck. It was so long ago.
Yeah. And I'm like,
hold on, I'll look it
I
up.
love these women swooning over this dude with eyeliner on.
Was it like Rock of Love or something like that?
It might have been Rock of Love. I'm not sure.
What's his name? Brett what?
Brett Michaels.
Yeah. Oh shit. What do you know?
Yeah.
Wow.
Today's my last day of the COVID quarantine.
Rock of Love with Brett Michaels.
Damn. Got it.
Nailed it.
And he was nailing everybody and ended up with nobody. I think that was the whole point of the show. He's like, man, I'm not about to commit to any of these women, but you know, I'll put some pins in the wall
and put some notches in a couple belts.
You know, I'm like, dude, you're a former rock star. The bed should be chopped down by now. That headboard should be emaciated. You know?
I mean,
but
he
anyway,
only played in Poison, so
what's
oh
the
my God.
What's the score?
The Leafa meter on this one. This is a solid, except you know what's going to take it down, and it could be me because I did break this out in less than a week. You see that right there?
Uh-oh.
You see
Peeling.
that? You see that?
Peeling.
It cracked
Coming
on me.
apart. Bad construction.
It cracked on me. So I don't know if it's the construction or if it's me not letting it acclimate enough, because what I did was I got home, I spent some time with my son, I ate, and then I took it right out of the cellophane and lit it right up. I didn't let it acclimate. So it's probably me. Because what you want to do is for 30 to 60 minutes, just let the cigar sit in the environment that you're going to smoke it in and acclimate to that environment. Because the humidor environment is different than outside of the humidor. So you're supposed to just kind of take your ashtray, sit it on the ashtray, you know, you fix your drink, you know, I might sometimes go and wash my face or change clothes and, you know, kiss on my wife a little bit, play with the kids, see how their day was, especially on a day like today when I've been gone a long time. I've been out of the house since 2:00. So, you know, but I didn't do that because I wanted to rush down here and get on. I didn't want to eat. Last week I ate while I was trying to podcast. I didn't like that. So I ate and then I came rushing downstairs and, you know.
Oh, you better than me.
I'm giving it a 4.75.
Oh, very high.
If I buy another one and I let it acclimate and it doesn't split, it'll go up to 4.85. But I really like this cigar. And I got it. I've never seen it before until I went to this place. My cousin was in from Houston with a couple of friends of hers this past weekend. So Friday, we went to Eduardo Lehman Cigars in Richton Park. If you haven't been there, I highly suggest you go. Great spot, black owned. Everybody's friendly. They play music in the back, but you can sit in the front where you can hear the music but still have a good conversation. Some people in the cigar culture, they like to have the loud music. Now, I'm not one of them. I'm a jazz, neo soul kind of person, but they were playing music in the back, and I was vibing, you know. But I was in the front, so I could still talk to my cousin and talk to her friends and interact with people and stuff like that. So it was a great. I've been in cigar lounges where the whole place has got the music just pounding. You can't have a conversation. You can't really enjoy your cigar that way. But this place found a way to marry the two pretty effectively.
Cigar lounges will always be a thing that I can never understand, because the whole point is to take your time and relax. And I need my stuff.
What do you mean?
I want to hang out at my house with my stuff. I want to switch from activity to activity. I don't want to be stuck in
and that's why you go to a certain cigar lounge where you, like, a lot of people, they'll bring their stuff. They'll bring their laptop and they'll sit off in a corner and they'll be smoking their cigar. When I was working marketing for Orange Theory Fitness, I would go to the cigar lounge a lot and do a lot of my marketing stuff at the lounge, because I could go in the back in the room by myself or other people that are working, you know, while they smoke, and I smoke my cigar and sit there and do my work, and no problems at all. And I like going to the cigar lounge too, because see, you don't have any little ankle biters running around.
So not yet.
When you have some kids and you want to go, you go to cigar lounge, because there's no such thing as just chilling in the house with your cigar if the kids are home, because at some point they're gonna come down and jump in your lap. You know.
I had a dream that there was a monster in my bed, but then I fought him, and then I had to go upstairs, and then I'm
gonna have to fight them when I go upstairs, because I know they're in the bed with us. I know they're in the bed right now. But a tentative 4.75. I'm gonna have to go back to Eduardo Lehman and get some more of these though, because that's where I found them.
All right. We're gonna make this a quick show because Tim's
Okay.
not feeling great. I know you got some stuff you gotta get back to, Haz, and my arm hurts real bad because my shoulder is doing its thing.
My pancreas is itching.
I think I figured out what it probably is. I think it's because I sleep on it.
Yeah, that'll do it every time.
But this is like gonna take a couple of days of not sleeping on it to go away because it is a deep ache.
Giggity.
Like it is deep in there, and I got the massage gun. Yeah, because other than that, I was just in there like, oh, what? There's something to my left.
Oh yeah.
Okay, because there was no turning my head. It was like a goldfish. I just turned my whole body. Yeah,
I've been there.
Yep, me too.
So hopefully but being relaxed and calm and not partaking in stressful things definitely helps with all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have an edible and
oh shit,
do some production work, relax, play Halo Infinite's campaign, which is out, and I'm gonna call it a night. But if you guys have enjoyed the show and you want to help us out and you're rolling in the corporate elite monies, by all means go to patreon.com/jigonamerica. Every little donation counts, like $1, $5 a month. That'd be nice. That'd be cool. Helps us pay for all the hosting and all the memberships and all the equipment and all the stuff that we have to pay for. That really helps us out. And then once we hit that $100 tier, we're going to donate a third of that, 33 buckaroos and 33 cents, to a list of charities that are voted on by the patrons. But if you don't have the cash right now, we get it. It's not a problem. Just make sure that you like, comment, subscribe anywhere you can find us. Check out our Twitch, twitch.tv/DOA podcast, and follow us on Twitter @DigOnAmerica. Any closing thoughts, gentlemen?
Get fucking vaccinated.
Get fucking vaccinated.
This past week, I lost yet another friend to COVID. So that puts me, I think, 22 or 23.
God damn.
And, I'm healthy. I take my vitamins. I lift. I exercise. I'll be fine. They're not fine. Get the doggone shot and quit playing roulette with your life. It's one thing to throw your dick on the table, but don't throw your life on the table. All right.
So
So
go ahead, Tim.
Sorry, I was just gonna piggyback on what Big Haas was saying, and COVID was not fun. It was not fun at all. Like that first week, I thought I was doing okay. I thought it was a cold. As soon as I was told it was COVID, it got worse. The first 5 days.
Now it's in your mind.
Yeah. And I was looking it up. The first 5 days is like a cold. After that, you really get hit with shit, man. Like, I had a fever. My lung capacity is gone. Like, it's going to take 2 weeks for me to recover from this. And I was working out too. I've been 2 months into working out, and I take my vitamins every day, and I still got my ass kicked. I'm vaccinated. I got the J&J shot. I was going to get my booster, but it got to me first. And if you're sick, if you think you might have COVID, go fucking get tested, and don't go to people's houses, because that's how I got it. Someone came to my house, didn't say they were sick, gave me COVID.
Wow.
Yep, deep French kiss will do that.
Yeah.
Deep French kissing. God. So I'm glad you're doing better, Tim.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you're better, man.
Yeah. Yeah, today's the first day I feel like a human being again.
Well,
Yeah, but
good.
don't do too much, because then you'll be on your ass.
Yeah, I know. I'm about to take some Dr. Robitussin and go to fucking sleep.
Hey, he on that lane, sipping on some scissor, sipping on some sipping on some. Hey, Tim from Texas, y'all ain't know that. Y'all ain't know
Tim
that.
from Houston, third coast, baby.
All right, so guys, for Big Haas, for Tim, for me, Mikey Famine, and for Dutch, who is probably somewhere writing up another bad joke for next week's Dig on America. This is Dig on America. We will catch y'all later. Peace.
Later.